The notification arrived on a quiet Tuesday, dragging me into a group chat titled, Kelsey's Big Day, The Inner Circle. My Aunt Marlene announced that invitations were strictly for the successful branches of the family tree, and I watched in silence as they pruned the guest list. They thought I was the cautionary tale of the family, the failure who never launched, until the bride typed my name into a search bar. The notification arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, vibrating against the mahogany surface of my desk like a trapped insect. I was in the middle of reviewing a forensic audit for a mid-sized logistics firm, my mind deep in the architecture of hidden assets and shell companies. It was the kind of work I loved, quiet, precise, and completely invisible to the outside world. I picked up the phone, expecting a client query. Instead, I saw a green icon indicating I had been added to a new group conversation. Kelsey's Big Day, The Inner Circle, 33 people. I frowned. I had not spoken to my cousin Kelsey in 3 years, not since a funeral where we had exchanged stiff nods over a plate of cold sandwiches. Our side of the family, the Bryants, operated on a system of strategic silence. We did not check in. We did not gather for holidays unless there was an inheritance to discuss or a reputation to salvage. I scrolled up to the first message. It was from my Aunt Marlene. Welcome, family. We are finally doing it. Kelsey said yes to Todd, and we are planning the most beautiful, intimate ceremony in Briar Haven. We created this group to keep the inner circle updated. This is going to be small, curated, and absolutely perfect. I set the phone down. Briar Haven, Massachusetts. It was a coastal town that smelled of old money and salt water, the kind of place where people wore sweaters that cost more than my first car. Marlene had been trying to project an image of effortless wealth for as long as I could remember. Usually while leveraging credit cards that were maxed out to the limit, I debated leaving the group immediately. My finger hovered over the exit button. My life now was disciplined and sealed. I ran a boutique risk audit firm called Bryant Advisory. I had no employees, just a robust network of contractors and a reputation for absolute discretion to the family. However, I was still Vivian, the vague failure, the woman who had burned out of a high-flying corporate career in New York City and retreated to a quiet apartment in Boston to do, well, they were not quite sure what I did. They assumed I was struggling. I preferred it that way, before I could leave. Another message popped up. Kelsey. Hi everyone. I am so excited. We are keeping things very tight on the guest list because we want quality over quantity. Think of this as a retreat for the people who truly matter to us. Then the floodgates opened. The notifications came in a rapid staccato burst. Aunt Linda. Oh, honey, that is wonderful. Uncle Bob just closed the deal on the new marina property, so we will definitely be there to celebrate. Cousin Brad. Congrats. Kels, just got the promotion to regional VP, so my schedule is crazy. But for you, I will make time. Need to break in the new Porsche anyway. Uncle Dave. Fantastic news. The business is expanding to 3 new locations this quarter, but we will mark the calendar. I leaned back in my chair, watching the screen fill with text. It was not a conversation. It was a resume dump. It was a status contest disguised as well-wishing. Every single message contained a subtle brag, a marker of financial health or professional ascent. It was a peacock display. I realized then why I had been added. I was the baseline. In every experiment, you need a control group. In the Bryant family dynamic, you needed someone to look down upon to verify your own elevation. I typed a simple response, keeping my face neutral even though I was alone in my office. Vivian. Congratulations. Kelsey. Wishing you both the best. I hit send. The chat went silent for a full 2 minutes. The rhythm of the bragging halted. Then, a message appeared from Marcus, my second cousin who worked in high-end real estate and had never forgiven me for not hiring him when I was 25 and actually had hiring power. Marcus. Thanks. Viv. We were just saying this wedding is really for the people who have made something of themselves, a celebration of success. 3 people reacted with the laughing emoji. My stomach tightened. It was a visceral, physical reaction. a ghost of the shame I had felt 4 years ago when my life in New York imploded. I had rebuilt myself brick by brick since then. I owned my apartment. I had 6 figures in liquid savings and a retirement account that would rival Uncle Dave's. But I drove a 5-year-old sedan and wore clothes that did not scream for attention. To them, silence was poverty. My phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, keeping my voice low. "Hey, Mom, did you see the chat?" she asked. Her voice sounded thin, tired. She had spent the last decade making herself smaller to avoid Marlene's wrath. "I saw it." I said, "Don't answer him. Vivian, please, you know how they are. If you get defensive, they win. They are just looking for a reaction." "I know," I said, staring at the laughing emojis on the screen. "It feels different this time, more aggressive. It is because Marlene is stressed. My mother said, 'I heard from your Uncle Ted that they are overextended on the house renovation. When they are stressed about money, they get cruel about status. You are just the easiest target. Stay quiet. Let them have their fun.'" I hung up, but the sting remained. I had worked so hard to separate my sense of worth from their validation. Yet one sentence from a cousin who leased his lifestyle could still pierce the armor. I went back to work, forcing myself to focus on the audit. I was tracing a discrepancy in a shipping manifest, hunting for the truth in the numbers. Numbers did not lie. Numbers did not use irony to humiliate you. At 6 p.m, the chat lit up again. This time, it was Marlene. Marlene. "Okay, family. Here is the reality. Because we are keeping this exclusively high-end, we are implementing a contribution tier for the invitation list. We want this to be a community effort. If you can sponsor a vendor, offer a venue connection, or contribute to the honeymoon fund, you are guaranteed a spot at the dinner. We want people who are invested in Kelsey's future." I read the message twice. It was polite, wrapped in emojis of champagne bottles and prayer hands. But the mechanism was brutal. It was a pay-to-play scheme. A few minutes later, Kelsey posted a document. "Kelsey, here is the list of confirmed guests so far. If you do not see your name, just message Mom about how you'd like to participate." I opened the file on my phone. It was a PDF, professionally designed with floral borders. I scanned the names: Brad, Linda, Bob, Marcus, Dave. Even my 19-year-old cousin who had just started an internship at a hedge fund was listed. My name was absent. My mother's name was absent. We were the only ones. I sat in the darkening office, the glow of the monitor illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was not just an exclusion. It was a public shunning. They had added me to the group solely to show me that I was not welcome. They wanted me to see the party through the window so I would understand my place in the cold. I closed the file. I did not message Marlene. I did not ask how to participate. I simply placed the phone face down and went home. The next day, I met Tasha for lunch. Tasha had been my rock during the bad years, the only person outside of my legal counsel who knew the full scope of what had happened at Harrogate Capital. She was fierce, loyal, and had zero patience for suburban warfare. "Leave the chat," Tasha said, stabbing a fork into her salad. "Why are you even entertaining this? It is masochism. Viv." I took a sip of sparkling water. "I cannot explain it. It is like watching a car crash in slow motion. And there is something off. Off how? They are trying too hard." I said, "Marlene is pushing this narrative of extreme wealth, but she is asking for contributions in the same breath, and the aggression toward me feels coordinated. Usually, they just ignore me. This feels like they need me to be the loser, because if you are the loser, they are the winners." Tasha said, "It is basic psychology. They are insecure, so they kick the dog. You are the dog. I am not a dog," I said quietly. "Then stop eating their scraps. Delete the thread. Block the numbers. You are a successful business owner. Vivian, you audit companies for fraud. You take down executives who think they are untouchable. Why are you letting Aunt Marlene, whose biggest achievement is a chemically peeled forehead, dictate your mood?" I laughed. But it was hollow, because they are the only family I have left. That is not a good enough reason to let them bleed you, Tasha said. I promised her I would think about it, but when I returned to my office, I did not leave the chat. I kept it open on my desktop, watching the messages scroll by like data points. Cousin Sarah. Just sent $500 for the floral arrangement. So happy to help. Marlene. You are an angel. Sarah, we are putting you at table 2 with the bridal party. It was a leaderboard. They were buying their seating assignments. 2 days passed. The wedding fervor escalated. They posted photos of dresses, discussed limousine rentals, and debated the merits of imported caviar versus local oysters. I remained a silent observer, a ghost in the machine. Then came the notification that changed everything. It was late Thursday, the maid of honor. A woman named Jessica, whom I had never met, posted a photo of the venue, a sprawling estate overlooking the Atlantic. Jessica. It is going to be perfect. So glad we are keeping it small. Cutting the unsuccessful ones was the best decision. No dead weight in the photos. At Vivian Bryant. I stared at the screen. She had tagged me. It was not a general statement. It was a direct digital finger point. The chat went instantly still. No one typed. No one reacted. The typing bubbles that usually danced at the bottom of the screen vanished. The silence was heavy, embarrassed. They all knew it was true. But saying it out loud, tagging the target, breached the veneer of polite society. 10 seconds later, Jessica sent another message. Jessica. Oops. It was not an apology. It was a smirk. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt the heat rise in my neck. The old reflex of defense and anger. I wanted to type out my bank balance. I wanted to upload the deed to my apartment. I wanted to tell them that the suit I was wearing cost more than Jessica's rent, but I stopped. Discipline. That was what saved me before. Emotion is a liability. Reaction is data for the enemy. I took a breath, held it for 4 counts, and released it. I typed slowly, checking every word. Vivian. Jessica. Thank you for the clarity. I certainly do not want to impose on such a curated event. I wish Kelsey a beautiful day. Please remove me from the chat so you can plan comfortably. I hit send. It was the high road. It was dignified. It gave them an out. I waited for the notification that I had been removed. I wanted it. I wanted the severance. Instead, Marlene replied. Marlene, no. Jessica was just joking. You know how we are, Vivian. Do not be so sensitive. Stay. We are family. We want everyone together in spirit. Even if they cannot contribute. The gaslighting was breathtaking. Even if they cannot contribute. She had managed to insult me again while pretending to be inclusive. I did not reply. I let the phone go dark. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window of my apartment, looking out at the Boston skyline. I felt old. I felt tired of the game. I decided that in the morning, I would block them all. I would fade away, just as they wanted, and let them have their hollow victory. I went to bed early, leaving my phone in the living room. I woke up at 2 a.m, a habit left over from my days on the trading floor when global markets opened while New York slept. I walked to the kitchen for water and saw the notification light blinking on my phone. It was a direct message from Kelsey. I unlocked the screen. Kelsey. Vivian, I am sorry about Jessica. She had too much wine. Mom says you are upset. I started to type a reply, telling her it was fine, that I was done, but then a second message appeared. Kelsey. But I have to ask you something. I was looking at the guest list and trying to figure out the seating, and Mom told me to double-check everyone's background for the security team at the venue. I Googled you. I froze. My thumb hovered over the glass. Kelsey. Why does Google say you were involved in the Harrogate case? The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Harrogate. I had not heard that name spoken in 4 years. It was the word that had divided my life into before and after. Harrogate Capital Partners was a mid-sized hedge fund where I had been a rising star in compliance and risk assessment. I was 29, hungry, and blind. I thought I was protecting the firm. In reality, I was stumbling into a massive, systemic Ponzi scheme orchestrated by the partners. When the implosion happened, it was violent. The FBI raided the Midtown office at 9 a.m. I was not arrested. I was the one who had found the discrepancy and flagged it, thinking it was an error. I became a cooperating witness. I spent 6 months in windowless rooms with federal prosecutors, walking them through the labyrinth of fake ledgers. I was never charged. I was a hero. Technically, but in finance, a whistleblower is just a snitch with a severance package. My name was toxic. The industry blacklisted me not because I was a criminal, but because I was dangerous. I knew how the sausage was made, and I had proven I would call the health inspector. I had signed NDAs. I had accepted a quiet exit. I had changed my career trajectory, moving into private consulting where I dealt with business owners who valued integrity over leverage. My family knew none of this. To them, I had just lost my job and moved away. I had never corrected them because the truth was too complex, too dangerous, and frankly, none of their business. But now, Kelsey had Googled me, and something was wrong. A simple Google search of Vivian Bryant usually brought up my LinkedIn profile, my new consulting website, and maybe a few results from local 5K charity runs. The Harrogate connection had been buried under years of right-to-be-forgotten requests and search engine optimization work I had paid for. You had to dig deep to find it. You had to know what you were looking for. Kelsey was a dental hygienist who thought due diligence meant flossing twice a day. She did not find the Harrogate connection by accident. Kelsey. Vivian, are you there? It says you were investigated. Were you in jail? I stared at the text. The wedding was a facade. The status updates, the floral arrangements, the petty exclusions. It was all noise. Someone had pointed her in that direction. Someone had handed the bride a shovel and told her exactly where to dig. I realized then that I could not leave the chat. I could not block the numbers and fade away. If I ran now, I would look guilty. And if I looked guilty, whatever narrative they were constructing would harden into fact. I was not being invited to a wedding. I was being summoned to a trial. I typed a single response, my fingers cold. Vivian, we need to talk, not over text. I set the phone down. The silence of the apartment was no longer peaceful. It was waiting. I had spent 4 years building a fortress of privacy, thinking I was safe. I was wrong. The walls had just been breached, and the call was coming from inside the house. I sat in the dark of my living room, the city lights of Boston blurring into streaks of amber and steel gray against the glass. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I did not type. I was frozen by the specific gravity of the name Kelsey had invoked. Harrogate. It was not just a company, it was a crater where my 20s had vanished. Most people experience their career disasters in private. A firing in a quiet office, a resignation letter typed with shaking hands. Mine had been broadcast on financial news tickers. Harrogate Capital Partners had been a mid-sized, aggressive player in the mezzanine debt market. I had been their senior risk analyst. I was 29 years old, making more money than anyone in my family ever had, and I thought I was untouchable. I was wrong. I was useful. The partners had used my clean audits of the legitimate side of the business to cloak the rotting, fraudulent core of their private equity arm. When I found the discrepancy, a series of wire transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands disguised as consulting fees, I did not shred the documents. I did not run. I walked into the local FBI field office with a banker's box under my arm. That decision saved me from prison, but it cost me everything else. The industry does not like snitches, even the honest ones. I had spent the last 4 years rebuilding my life in the shadows, operating Bryant Advisory as a ghost ship. My clients hired me because I was thorough and silent. I never spoke about Harrogate. I never told my family because I knew exactly what they would do with the information. They would not see the integrity of the whistleblower. They would only see the shame of the scandal. And now, Kelsey knew, or rather, she thought she knew. Before I could formulate a safe reply to her private text, the main family group chat vibrated. I clicked over. My stomach turned over, a slow, cold rotation. Kelsey had posted a screenshot. It was a search result from a browser on a phone. The image was grainy, but the text was legible. It was a snippet from a legal blog, dated 4 years ago. Investigation into Harrogate Capital Partners expands as insiders cooperate with federal prosecutors regarding allegations of wire fraud and embezzlement. Vivian Bryant, a risk analyst at the firm. The screenshot was cropped. It cut off before the sentence finished. It did not say was not charged. It did not say voluntarily provided evidence. It just linked my name to the words investigation, fraud, and embezzlement. The caption under the photo was typed by Kelsey. Kelsey, guys, I am freaking out. I was just doing the guest list security check like Mom said, and I found this. Is this real? The reaction was instantaneous. It was as if they had been waiting for the signal. Cousin Marcus. Holy shit. Is that why she moved back from New York? Aunt Linda. Oh my God. Fraud? Uncle Dave. I knew it. I knew the story about wanting a slower pace did not add up. You do not walk away from that kind of money unless you are forced out. Then came the performance of concern. This was the Bryant family specialty, draping judgment in the velvet robes of sympathy. Cousin Sarah. At Vivian Bryant. Are you okay? Were you arrested? We can pray for you. It is never too late to turn things around. Marlene. Vivian. Honey. Please tell us this isn't true. We are worried sick. I stared at the messages, feeling the heat rise up my neck. It was a physical violation. They were dissecting my trauma in a group chat between emojis of wedding cakes and champagne flutes. They were feasting on the idea of my ruin. I knew I had to respond. Silence was an admission of guilt. Over-explaining was an admission of weakness. I needed to be clinical. I needed to be the auditor. I typed carefully, my fingers stiff. Vivian. There is no need for alarm. I was a cooperating witness in a federal case regarding my former employer 4 years ago. I was not a suspect. I was not charged, and I assisted the prosecution in uncovering misconduct by the firm's owners. That is the extent of the story. It is a closed chapter. I hit send. I watched the read receipts populate. The truth should have stopped them. It was clear. It was exonerating. But I had forgotten the fundamental rule of my family. They did not want the truth. They wanted the narrative. Cousin Marcus. A cooperating witness usually means you cut a deal. Viv. Just saying. Aunt Linda. I don't know about legal stuff, but federal case sounds very serious. Are you sure you are safe to be around? I mean, for the wedding? My jaw tightened. They were willfully misunderstanding. They were choosing to interpret privacy as deceit. Then Marlene stepped in. She was the administrator, the matriarch, the ringmaster. Marlene. Vivian. Thank you for being honest. Even if it is shocking. We love you, no matter what mistakes you have made. But I have to be protective of Kelsey right now. The Larkins, Kelsey's fiancé's family, are very prominent. They are private people. If there is any chance of drama, or reporters, or police, maybe it is better if you sit this one out. The trap snapped shut. It was masterful. She had framed my exclusion not as a punishment, but as a mercy. Sit this one out, as if I were a bench warmer with a sprained ankle, not a relative being uninvited because of a deliberate smear campaign. Cousin Sarah. Marlene is right. It is for the best. Viv, you can focus on getting back on your feet. Uncle Dave. We will send you photos. No need to stress yourself out with a big social event when you are clearly dealing with legal issues. I felt a surge of old shame, the kind I thought I had therapy out of my system years ago. For a second, I believed them. Maybe I was damaged goods. Maybe I was a liability. Maybe I should just retreat to my quiet apartment and let them have their perfect, fraud-free weekend. But then the auditor in me woke up. I looked at the screenshot again. The cropping was aggressive, yes. But the source... I opened my laptop. I pulled up Google. I typed in my name. Vivian Bryant. The first page was clean. My LinkedIn. My business registry. A 5K time from last October. I typed Vivian Bryant Harrogate. I got a few hits, mostly generic mentions in long lists of employees, or archived articles behind paywalls. I typed the text from Kelsey's screenshot into the search bar. Nothing came up on the first page, or the second. I frowned. I grabbed my phone and called Tasha. She answered on the first ring. You sound like you are hyperventilating. Breathe. They found it. I said, Found what? The body? Harrogate. I said, Kelsey posted a screenshot in the family chat. They are acting like I am Bernie Madoff. Marlene is already trying to uninvite me to protect the fiancé's reputation. Tasha went quiet. Okay, that sucks. But it is public record, right? Yes. But it is buried. I said, I spent $5,000 on a reputation management firm to push those results to page 10. You have to really dig to find the specific blog post she found. Send me the screenshot, Tasha said. I forwarded it. I heard the clicking of her keyboard. Tasha was a paralegal at a massive corporate firm. Her research skills were weaponized. Give me a minute, she muttered. I waited, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Okay, Tasha said, her voice changing. This is interesting. What? The text in the screenshot? It is not from a news article. It is from a PDF hosted on a niche legal compliance archive. It is a transcript from a deposition summary. So, Tasha said. You cannot find this by Googling Vivian Bryant. You would only find this if you searched for Vivian Bryant and Wellspring Integrity Group. I froze. Wellspring Integrity Group. That was the third-party compliance consultancy the DOJ had brought in to audit Harrogate's books during the investigation. I had worked closely with them for 3 months. Their name was not in the news. Their name was only in the case files. That means, I said slowly, that whoever searched for me knew the name of the specific auditing firm involved in the case. Exactly, Tasha said. Your cousin, the dental hygienist, did not stumble onto this. Someone gave her the search terms. Specific, technical search terms. My blood ran cold. This was not just family gossip. This was reconnaissance. Kelsey said she was doing a security check. I said, bullshit. Tasha said, someone is feeding her info. Who in your family knows about Wellspring? No one. I said, I never mentioned them. Then someone outside the family knows. Tasha said, and they are using your aunt and cousin to rattle you. I thanked Tasha and hung up. I sat in the dark, the glow of the laptop illuminating my hands. I looked at them. They were steady. I was not the victim here. I was the target. And if I was a target, that meant I was a threat. I opened a private chat with Kelsey. Vivian. Kelsey, I need you to be honest with me. The screenshot you posted is from a legal archive that doesn't appear in standard search results. You would have needed specific keywords to find it. Who gave you those keywords? I saw the typing bubble appear, then disappear, then appear again. Kelsey. I just Googled you. Why are you being so intense? Vivian. Kelsey, I audit companies for a living. I know how digital footprints work. You did not find a deposition summary from Wellspring Integrity Group by accident. Who told you to look for that? A long pause. 3 minutes. Kelsey. Mom. I stared at the word. Marlene. Kelsey. She said it is important we know who we are inviting. She said she heard rumors that you were in trouble and we needed to be sure. She gave me a piece of paper with things to type in. I didn't know what they meant. I just wanted to help. Marlene. Marlene, who barely knew how to attach a PDF to an email, had a list of specific search terms related to a federal financial investigation? Impossible. Marlene did not have that kind of reach, unless someone gave it to her. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from a number I did not have saved, but I recognized the area code. It was my cousin Patrick, the quiet one who ran a landscaping business and mostly stayed out of the group chat drama. Patrick. Hey Viv, saw the chat. Sorry about the pile-on. It's ugly. Vivian. Thanks. Patrick, it is what it is. Patrick. Look, I shouldn't say this, but watch your back. Marlene and Uncle Ted are drowning. I did the landscaping for their house last month and the check bounced. Twice, Ted asked me not to say anything. They are desperate. Vivian. Desperate for what? Patrick. Money. Appearances. This wedding is not just a party. They have been hinting to everyone that it is a networking opportunity and a chance for the family to show support. I think they are looking for bailouts without asking for bailouts. The pieces clicked together with a sickening sound. Marlene was broke. She needed the wedding to project success, perhaps to secure a loan or impress a new investor. maybe even the groom's wealthy family. I was the anomaly in the picture. If I was successful, I might ask questions. If I was a failure, a criminal, a charity case, then I could be dismissed or used. The narrative of Vivian the fraud served two purposes. It discredited me so no one would believe me if I pointed out Marlene's financial cracks, and it made everyone else feel superior, which made them more likely to open their wallets to help the family. I was the designated villain in Marlene's screenplay. I went back to the group chat. The sympathy had died down, replaced by a strange, expectant silence. Then Marlene posted again. Marlene. Anyway, let's focus on the positive. We have a little hiccup with the florist. Prices have gone up so much. Since we are all chipping in, I was wondering, Vivian, since you are not sure about attending, maybe you could sponsor the floral arch? It would be a beautiful way to show you are still with us in spirit. I know you probably have contacts in the city who owe you favors. The audacity was breathtaking. First, she smears my name as a criminal. Then, she uninvites me. Now, she asked me to pay for the flowers for the party I am banned from, and the phrasing, contacts who owe you favors. She was implying my criminal connections could be useful. She was testing the waters. If I paid, I was buying my way back into their good graces and confirming I was desperate. If I refused, I was the bitter, stingy relative who wouldn't help the bride. I looked at the screen. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest. I was not going to play the role of the cowed penitent, and I was not going to play the role of the ATM. Vivian. Aunt Marlene. The wedding budget sounds stressful. As I mentioned, my business is fully legitimate, and I do not trade in favors. I will be sending a standard wedding gift to the couple via their registry, just as any cousin would. I hope you understand. I hit send. I waited. Marlene. Oh, I see. Then, a new message to the entire group. Marlene. Well, everyone, Vivian says she can't help. We will just have to tighten our belts a little more to make Kelsey's day special. If anyone else can step up, let me know. It was subtle, but it was damning. Vivian says she can't help. Not Vivian won't pay for an arch she won't see, but Vivian is unable to help. She had successfully spun my refusal into confirmation of my financial ruin. To the family, I was now broke, likely under investigation, and too proud to admit it. Aunt Linda. Don't worry. Marlene. We can chip in a little more. We don't want Kelsey to go without just because some people are struggling. Cousin Brad. I got you. Aunt Em. Put me down for an extra 500. Family looks out for family. I watched them pledge money to cover a deficit I had not created, all while patting themselves on the back for being better than me. I was the scapegoat, and my hypothetical poverty was the fuel for their generosity. I closed the laptop. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Marlene was hiding something. She had search terms she shouldn't have. She had debts she couldn't pay, and she was using me as a smokescreen. I stood up and walked to the window. The reflection in the glass showed a woman with dark circles under her eyes, but a set jaw. I picked up my phone and called my assistant. My real assistant. A contractor named David who specialized in forensic data retrieval. David. I said when he answered, Vivian, it is 10 o'clock at night. I have a job. It is not a client. It is personal. Okay, he said, his tone shifting. What do you need? I need a full background check on a company called North Pine Development, and I need you to find everything you can on a woman named Marlene Bryant and her husband Ted. Look for liens, lawsuits, bounced checks. Look for anything that connects them to a family named Larkin. The Larkins? The hotel people? Yes. And David? Yeah? Dig deep. Use the Wellspring protocols. I heard him whistle low. You are going to war? No, I said, watching the city lights burn. I am just conducting an audit. I hung up. I was not going to sit this one out. Marlene had made a critical error. She thought she had shamed me into silence. She thought she had cut the unsuccessful one from the herd. But she had forgotten what I actually did for a living. I didn't just survive disasters. I documented them. I packed a bag. I was going to Briar Haven, not as a guest, not as a cousin. I was going as an investigator. I looked at the group chat one last time. Marlene had posted a gif of a woman popping a bottle of champagne with the caption, "Crisis averted. The family provides." I turned off the phone. Let them drink. I thought, the bill is coming. I drove into Briar Haven on a Wednesday, 2 days before the official wedding festivities were scheduled to begin. The drive from Boston took 2 hours. A steady crawl down the coast past cranberry bogs and salt marshes that bled into the gray Atlantic. Briar Haven was a town that had perfected the art of exclusion. The hedges were high, the driveways were long, and the zoning laws were designed to keep out anyone who bought their furniture at a big box store. I had told Marlene I was coming early for client meetings in the area. It was a lie, but a necessary one. I needed to be on the ground, but I refused to be under her roof. Marlene had offered me the guest room in the rental house she and my uncle were sharing with the bridal party, framing it as a chance to bond. I knew better. In that house, I would be a captive audience for her guilt trips. I would be the designated listener, the runner of errands, the sponge for their anxiety. Instead, I checked into the Merchant, a boutique hotel in the historic district. It was quiet, expensive, and anonymous. I paid with my corporate card. My room was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the harbor. I unpacked my suit, my laptop, and a file folder containing the printouts of the group chat. I was treating this weekend like a hostile site visit. I needed a perimeter. Once I was settled, I sent a text to Kelsey. "Vivian, I am in town. I have an hour before my first call. Coffee?" She replied instantly. "Yes, please. Meet me at the Daily Grind on Main. Come alone." The come alone was unnecessary. Who did she think I was bringing? A federal agent? I walked to the coffee shop. The air was crisp, smelling of brine and drying leaves. Briar Haven looked exactly as I remembered it from childhood summers, quaint, manicured, and slightly suffocating. Kelsey was sitting at a corner table, hunched over a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. She looked exhausted. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she was wearing a sweatshirt that said "Bride" in gold foil script, but her posture screamed hostage. I bought a black coffee and sat down opposite her. "Hey, Kels," I said softly. She jumped, her hand knocking into her latte. "Oh, hi. Viv, you made it." She looked at me, her eyes darting to my blazer, my shoes, my bag. It was the scan. She was assessing my value, checking for cracks. "You look tired." I said, "I am fine," she said, her voice tight. "It is just the logistics. There are so many moving parts. We have to think about the optics. The guest experience has to be seamless. Optics, guest experience. These were corporate buzzwords, not the vocabulary of a woman marrying the love of her life. "Is Todd helping?" I asked. "Todd is great," she said, but her eyes did not meet mine. "He is just busy. His family, the Larkins. They are very particular. They have a certain standard. We cannot embarrass them." The Larkins. I knew the name. Of course. Larkin Event Holdings owned half the luxury venues on the eastern seaboard. They were new money pretending to be old money, which made them the most dangerous kind of snobs. "Is that why Marlene is so stressed?" I asked. "Because of the Larkins?" "Mom just wants everything to be perfect," Kelsey said. She began flipping through the binder. "We have the welcome dinner, the rehearsal, the ceremony, the reception, the farewell brunch. It is a production. We have to curate the energy." She sounded like a press release. "Kelsey," I said, reaching across the table to touch her hand. Her skin was cold. "Stop. Look at me. Do you actually want this wedding?" She froze. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw a terrified girl who was in over her head. "Of course I want it," she whispered. "I love Todd." "But do you want the production?" "We do not have a choice," she said, pulling her hand away. "The venue is a Larkin property. They are giving us a discount, but there are strings attached. We have to use their vendors. We have to hit a certain head count. Mom said she would handle the costs, but—" She trailed off, looking out the window. "But what?" I pressed. "She's been making calls. Kelsey said, promising things, saying that we have silent backers. She keeps telling the Larkins that the Bryant side of the family is liquid, that we have resources. I felt a chill. Marlene was leveraging a fantasy, and you Googled me because... Why? I asked. Kelsey flinched. Mom said we needed to vet the guest list. She said if anyone had a history, the Larkins would find out. They run background checks on everyone. Viv, even the guests. They are obsessed with reputation. So Marlene wanted to see if I would trigger an alarm. I said, she wanted to know if you were safe. Kelsey said, and when I found that stuff, the investigation, you panicked. I finished. I did not know. Viv, she said, her voice rising, I thought you were just struggling. I did not know you were involved in something like that. I am not involved. I said firmly, I was a witness. There is a difference. Kelsey looked at me, her eyes pleading. Can you just be low profile this weekend? Please? If Mr. Larkin asks what you do, just say you are in data entry or that you are a teacher. I stared at her. She was asking me to erase myself to protect a lie her mother was telling a family of venue owners. I run a risk audit firm. Kelsey, I said, it is a respectable business. I am not going to lie about who I am. Please, she hissed, just for me. Do not make it about you. I stood up. I realized then that there was no Kelsey to reason with. She had been fully assimilated into the project. I will see you at the welcome drinks, I said. Get some sleep. I walked out of the coffee shop, feeling the weight of the town pressing down on me. Marlene was playing a dangerous game. She was promising money she didn't have to people who likely sued for sport, and she was using the family as collateral. My phone rang as I walked back to the hotel. It was a Washington, D.C. area code. I answered, Bryant, Vivian, it is Marcus. I stopped walking. Marcus was the former general counsel for Harrogate. We had spent hundreds of hours together in conference rooms while the ship went down. He was one of the few people from that time I still trusted. He had moved into private practice, handling crisis management for political figures. Marcus, I said, to what do I owe the pleasure? I have an alert set up on the old Harrogate files, he said. Standard procedure. I saw a spike in traffic this week. Not from the media. From a localized IP address in Massachusetts. I know. I said, my family found the archives. It is not just your family. Viv, Marcus said, the pings are coming from a corporate server. Larkin Event Holdings. I stopped on the sidewalk. A couple with a golden retriever walked past me, laughing. Larkin? I asked. Yeah, Marcus said. They were querying the Wellspring depositions, specifically your testimony regarding the offshore accounts. Why would a wedding venue company care about a 4-year-old financial fraud case? That is the question, Marcus said. But here's the thing you might have forgotten. The Larkins did business with Harrogate. Back in 2018, I frowned, searching my memory. The web of Harrogate's investments was vast. Which entity? I asked. They had a mezzanine loan for a resort development in Florida. Marcus said, it was one of the toxic assets. When Harrogate collapsed, the loan was called in. The Larkins lost about $4 million. My grip tightened on the phone. They lost money because of the audit I initiated. I said, technically, they lost money because the money was fake. Marcus corrected. But yes, to a certain type of person. You are the one who popped the balloon. If they connect the dots, that the Vivian Bryant coming to their son's wedding is the same Vivian Bryant who testified in the case that cost them $4 million, it might get ugly. It already is ugly. I said, just watch yourself. Marcus said, these people hold grudges longer than they hold equity. I hung up. The wind coming off the harbor suddenly felt biting. This wasn't just about Marlene being embarrassed by my failure. This was about the Larkins potentially realizing who I was. Marlene wasn't just trying to hide a poor relative. She was trying to hide a liability. I went back to the hotel room and opened my laptop. I needed to work. I needed to feel the clean, cold logic of numbers. I logged into my secure server. Bryant Advisory was doing well. I had 3 active contracts, a supply chain audit for a tech firm, a compliance review for a regional bank, and a fraud investigation for a nonprofit. I had built this from nothing, rising from the ashes of my reputation with nothing but competence and silence. I was proud of it, but apparently, my privacy was about to expire. The group chat notification dinged on my desktop. Cousin Brad. Guys? Has anyone actually looked up Vivian's company? My heart stopped. Brad posted a link. It was my website. Bryant Advisory, Comprehensive Risk Management Forensic Auditing. The site was professional, sleek, and understated. It listed my certifications. It listed my speaking engagements at industry conferences. It did not look like the website of a struggling nobody. Cousin Brad. This does not look like a freelance gig. This looks legit. Viv, are you the CEO? I hesitated. I had never hidden it, but I had never advertised it. Vivian. Yes, it is my firm. The reaction was not congratulations. It was indignation. Aunt Linda. Wait, so you have your own company? A real one? Vivian. Yes, Aunt Linda. Cousin Marcus. Then why have you been acting like you are broke for the last 3 years? Driving that beat-up Honda? Vivian. I never said I was broke. I just live simply. I reinvest in the business. Marlene. So you have money. The message sat there, naked and greedy. Marlene. You have been sitting there watching us stress about the budget, watching your cousin cry about flowers, and you never said a word? You let us think you were the charity case? I stared at the screen, stunned by the mental gymnastics. They were angry that I wasn't a failure. If I was a failure, they could pity me. If I was successful and didn't share it, I was selfish. Vivian. I did not let you think anything. You made assumptions. My finances are private. Marlene. Family is not private. Vivian. Family helps family. We have been treating you with kid gloves because we thought you were fragile, and meanwhile, you are sitting on a pile of cash? Cousin Sarah. It is kind of messed up. Viv, we were all pitching in $20 here, $50 there. And you are a CEO? They were turning my success into a weapon. They were offended that I hadn't performed wealth for them, because by not performing it, I had denied them the chance to exploit it. Then came the pivot. Marlene didn't miss a beat. Marlene. Well, this changes things. Since Vivian is actually the most successful one here, I think it is only fair she steps up. The rehearsal dinner at the yacht club is currently over budget by $3,000. Vivian, this is your chance to prove you are actually part of this family and not just judging us from your high horse. Marlene, sponsor the dinner. It is a write-off for your business anyway, right? The audacity was suffocating. $3,000. She wanted me to write a check to fix a problem she had created, as a penalty for being successful. I typed slowly. Vivian, Aunt Marlene, I am happy that my career is no longer a source of concern for you. However, my answer regarding the wedding expenses remains the same. I will be giving a gift to the couple. I will not be funding the event logistics. Marlene. Wow. Just wow. Uncle Dave. Disappointing. Vivian. Really disappointing. Cousin Brad. Money changes people. I guess. I closed the chat window. I was shaking. Not from fear, but from rage. They were rewriting reality in real time. 10 minutes ago, I was a criminal. Now, I was a miser. The only constant was that I was the villain. I ordered room service, a club sandwich and a glass of seltzer. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to run into any of them. At 11 o'clock that night, an email arrived in my personal inbox. The subject line was blank. The sender was an alphanumeric string from a burner address. Attached was a PDF. I opened it. It was an invoice from Larkin Floral Design. The total was $6,500. The status was pending. In the billing notes section, there was a typed entry. Client assures payment via family contribution. Authorized contributor, Vivian Bryant. Bryant Advisory. Card on file to be provided upon arrival. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a request. Marlene had already promised the money. She had used my name. She had used my company name. Authorized contributor. She had told the vendors I was paying. That was why she was so insistent I sponsor the dinner. She needed to cover the lie she had already told. If I showed up and refused to pay, the floral arrangements would be held hostage, and Marlene would point the finger at me. Vivian promised and then backed out. She ruined the wedding, but this was more than manipulation. This was fraud. Using my name and my business entity to secure goods without my consent was a crime. I did not sleep. I sat up, staring at the invoice. At 7 a.m, I called my attorney. Elena. Elena was sharp, expensive, and had zero tolerance for nonsense. I sent you a document. I said when she picked up, I am looking at it. Elena said, her voice groggy but alert. Who is Marlene Bryant? My aunt, the mother of the bride. She committed wire fraud, Elena said flatly, or at least attempted theft of services by deception. Did you authorize this? No. Did you ever give her your card info? No. Okay, Elena said. This is tricky. If we send a cease and desist now, we blow up the wedding. The vendor will cancel the order. Your aunt will claim it was a misunderstanding. I don't want to blow up the wedding. I said, I want to protect myself. Then we need to document the unauthorized use. Elena said, but Vivian? There is more. What? I ran a quick search on the vendor email chain associated with this invoice. Don't ask me how I got it. Marlene didn't just list you as a contributor. She forwarded an email that looks like it came from you. My blood ran cold. From me? It is a spoofed address. Vivian, Bryant@gmail.com or something similar. The email says, go ahead with the upgrades. I will settle the bill when I arrive. I stood up, pacing the small hotel room. She impersonated me. I said, yes, she created a paper trail to make you liable. Why? I asked. Why go this far? Because she is desperate, Elena said, and because she thinks you are weak. She thinks that when you are standing there in the lobby and the florist demands payment, you will pay it to avoid a scene. She is banking on your shame. I stopped pacing. She was right. The old Vivian would have paid. The Vivian who felt guilty for existing, who felt she owed the family for their tolerance, would have written the check to keep the peace. But that Vivian died in a deposition room 4 years ago. What do I do? I asked. Do you want to stop her? Elena asked. I want to end it, I said. Then you need to let her play the hand. Elena said. Let her think the trap is set. Bring the evidence. And when they come for the money, you don't pay. You present the proof. I looked out the window at the harbor. The boats were bobbing in the gray water, tethered to their moorings. I am not paying. I said, good. Elena said, I will draft an affidavit stating you never authorized these charges. I will have it notarized and emailed to you within the hour. Print it out. Keep it with you. I hung up. I showered and dressed in a navy suit. I applied my makeup with precision. Armor for the face. I was going to the rehearsal. I was going to smile. I was going to let Marlene believe she had won, that I was the silent, successful cousin who could be bullied into compliance, but I was bringing the file. I checked my reflection in the mirror. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like an auditor arriving at a crime scene. I grabbed my purse and walked out the door. The game was rigged, but Marlene had forgotten one thing. Never try to con someone who reads the fine print for a living. The address for the rental house was in a subdivision called The Gables, a collection of oversized, vinyl-sided homes that looked impressive from the street, but felt hollow when you knocked on the walls. It was exactly the kind of place Marlene would choose. Maximum square footage, minimum character. I parked my rental car 2 houses down. I checked my purse to ensure the affidavit from my attorney was there, folded neatly inside the inner pocket. I did not intend to use it immediately. It was leverage, a nuclear option if the conversation devolved into absolute denial. I walked up the driveway. The front door was open, and I could hear the chaotic hum of wedding prep spilling out onto the lawn. Somewhere inside, a vacuum was running, and someone was shouting about stemware. I knocked on the doorframe. Marlene appeared in the hallway. She was wearing a floral caftan and holding a glass of white wine. though it was barely 2 in the afternoon. Her face, usually composed in a mask of suburban pleasantry, looked strained. The makeup was settling into the lines around her mouth. "Vivian!" she cried out, her voice pitching up 2 octaves. "You came. I knew you would not abandon us. Come in. Come in." She ushered me into the living room. It was cluttered with boxes, garment bags, and stacks of favors. Little jars of artisanal honey with Kelsey Todd printed on the labels. "I thought you were staying at the hotel," Marlene said, clearing a stack of magazines off a sofa. "But I am so glad you stopped by. We are drowning in logistics. Actually, since you are here, could you run to the liquor store?" Ted forgot the bourbon for the welcome bags. She was doing it again, assigning tasks, assuming my compliance. "I am not here to run errands." "Marlene," I said, remaining standing. She froze, the smile faltering just a fraction. "Oh, well, surely you can help your cousin. I need to talk to you," I said, privately. Marlene glanced toward the kitchen, where I could hear my Uncle Ted arguing with someone on the phone. "Fine," she said, her voice dropping. "Let's go to the sunroom." The sunroom was cold. The windows looked out over a backyard that was mostly mud and construction debris from a stalled patio project. Marlene sat in a wicker chair and took a long sip of her wine. "What is it, Vivian?" she asked. "If this is about the seating chart, I already told you that table 9 is perfectly fine." I took a breath. I kept my voice level, the same tone I used when briefing a board of directors on a compliance failure. "I received an invoice last night," I said, "from Larkin Floral Design." Marlene's eyes flickered, a micro-expression of panic, instantly covered by feigned confusion. "Oh? They must have sent it to the wrong email. I told them I was handling everything. It was sent to me because I was listed as the authorized payer," I said, "and because someone forwarded them an email from a spoofed address that looked like mine, explicitly authorizing the charge." Marlene set her wine glass down. The liquid sloshed over the rim, staining the wicker table. "I don't know what you are talking about," she said. "Technology is so glitchy these days. Do not lie to me." "Marlene," I said, "I have the email chain. I have the metadata. You impersonated me to a vendor to secure credit. That is fraud." The word hung in the air between us. Fraud. Marlene's face changed. The sweet, scattered aunt vanished. In her place was a woman cornered, her eyes hard and bright with sudden rage. "Oh, stop it," she snapped. "You and your legal words. You always have to make everything so sterile, don't you?" "It was a placeholder." "Vivian, a placeholder. I was going to pay it back as soon as Ted's bonus cleared. You used my name without my consent." I said, "So what?" she shouted, standing up. "You have the money. We all saw your website. We saw your company. You are sitting on a gold mine while we are scraping by to give Kelsey a decent wedding, and you are worried about a few emails? It is not about the money." I said, "It is about the manipulation." "Manipulation?" Marlene laughed. A harsh, barking sound. "You call it manipulation. I call it survival. You think you are so special. Vivian, you think you are so much better than us with your city apartment and your suits, but you forget who picked up the pieces when your father died." I stiffened. My father. He had died when I was 22. A sudden heart attack that left my mother shattered and our finances in chaos. We handled everything. Marlene hissed, stepping closer. "Ted and I, we handled the funeral. We handled the estate. We handled your mother when she could barely get out of bed. You were off in New York playing Wall Street girl, too busy to deal with the mess. We protected you. You didn't protect me," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "You took over. There is a difference. We did what was necessary," she screamed. "And now, when we need a little help, when we need the family to look strong for the Larkins, you treat us like criminals? You owe this family. Vivian, you owe us for every time we covered for your mother's instability." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. They had always painted my mother as unstable, fragile, confused. I had accepted it as truth for years. I had believed that Marlene and Ted were the benevolent guardians who had stepped in to save us from my mother's incompetence. But looking at Marlene now, her face twisted with entitlement, her justification for fraud resting on a decade-old debt of care, I saw something else. I saw a woman who needed me to be in debt to her. Because if I wasn't in debt, I might start looking at the ledger. I took a step back. "Why did you tell people to Google me?" I asked. The question caught her off guard. She blinked. "What? Kelsey?" I said. "You gave her search terms. You told her to look for the Harrogate deposition. You wanted her to find the dirt. Why?" Marlene crossed her arms. Her chest was heaving. "Because we needed leverage." She spat. "Leverage? Ted is in trouble." "Vivian!" she shouted. "Real trouble. The business is gone. The house is mortgaged to the hilt. We need this wedding to go well. We need the Larkins to invest in Ted's new venture. If they think we are successful, they will sign. But if you came here acting all high and mighty, asking questions, you could ruin it. So you tried to discredit me," I said, realizing the full scope of the strategy. "You wanted everyone to think I was a criminal so that if I pointed out you were broke, no one would believe me. It was insurance," she said. "And it would have worked if you hadn't come here acting like a detective." I looked at her. I felt a profound sense of pity, mixed with disgust. She was cannibalizing her own niece's wedding, and my reputation, to cover a financial sinkhole. "I am not paying the florist." "Marlene," I said quietly, "and I am not sponsoring the dinner." Marlene's face went deadly pale. "If you don't pay, they will pull the flowers," she whispered. "The rehearsal is tomorrow. The Larkins will see. Then you better find another donor." I said. I turned to leave. "If you walk out," Marlene screamed after me, "do not expect a seat at the reception. You are ungrateful. You are selfish. You are just like your father, cold and useless." I walked out of the sunroom, through the cluttered living room, and out the front door. My hands were shaking, but my mind was racing. "You are just like your father. We handled the estate." Something about the way she said it, the possessiveness, the defensive aggression, triggered a memory. I remembered the weeks after my father died. I remembered Ted bringing stacks of papers for my mother to sign. I remembered them telling me, "Don't worry, Vivian, there isn't much left, but we will make sure the debts are paid." I got into my rental car and locked the doors. I sat there for a long time, staring at the vinyl siding of the house. I pulled out my phone and called my mother. "Vivian?" She answered. Her voice was small, anxious. She was not coming to the wedding. The travel was too much for her anxiety. She had said, now I wondered if her anxiety was actually a learned response to Marlene's bullying. "Mom," I said, "I need to ask you something about when Dad died." "Oh, Vivian," she sighed. "Do we have to talk about that? It was such a hard time." "We do," I said. Marlene just threw it in my face. She said they handled the estate. "Mom, was there an estate?" My mother hesitated. "Well," she said slowly, "your father always said he had a trust set up. From his parents. He called it the rainy day fund. He told me it was for you. For when you got married or bought a house." I frowned. I had never seen a dime of a trust. I had paid for college with loans. I had bought my apartment with my own bonuses. "What happened to it?" I asked. Marlene and Ted said, "Well, they said the market had crashed." My mother said, her voice wavering, "They said the investments had gone to zero. They showed me papers. Vivian, lots of papers with red numbers. They said the only way to save the house was to sign everything over to an entity that could manage the debt." "Did you sign?" "I think so," she whispered. "I was so medicated. Honey, the doctor gave me pills for the grief. I just wanted the noise to stop. Ted said it was for the best. He said I wasn't capable." I felt a cold fury rising in my chest, sharper and colder than anything I had felt during the Harrogate trial. "Do you remember the name of the entity?" I asked. "Or the lawyer?" "No," she said. "But, wait, there was a letter. From the bank. It came a few years later. I didn't understand it. So I put it in the box with your father's watch." "Mom," I said, Go to the box. Now. I waited on the line. I heard her walking. The creak of the floorboards in her small apartment in Ohio. I heard the rustle of papers. Here it is, she said. It is a statement. From First National. It says, transfer confirmation. Read it to me. I commanded. It says, transfer of assets from Bryant Family Trust to North Pine Development, LLC. The world stopped spinning. North Pine Development. That was the company I had asked my assistant, David, to investigate, Marlene's husband's old venture. Wait, Mom, I said, what is the date on that transfer? October 14th, 2012, she said. That was 6 months after my father died. Thank you. Mom, I said, put that paper in a safe place. Do not lose it. I hung up and immediately dialed Elena. I need you to run a property search on North Pine Development, LLC. I said, driving out of the subdivision, and I need you to pull the incorporation documents. I am on it. Elena said, what am I looking for? I think my aunt and uncle embezzled my inheritance. I said, and I think they used my mother's grief as the pen. I drove back to the hotel in a fugue state. The betrayal was so vast, so architectural, that I couldn't fully process it. It wasn't just that they had stolen money. It was that they had curated a narrative of my mother's incompetence to cover their theft. They had gaslit her into believing she was crazy so she wouldn't ask why the accounts were empty. And they had done the same to me. They had needed me to be the struggling cousin, the unsuccessful one, because if I ever gained financial literacy, if I ever became an auditor, I would see the holes in the story. My failure was the keystone of their security. I reached the hotel room and opened my laptop. David had sent the preliminary report on North Pine. It was a shell game. North Pine had been dissolved in 2015, but before it folded, it had transferred assets, cash, mostly, to a personal account held by Theodore and Marlene Bryant. The amount was not millions, but it was significant. $150,000. That was the rainy day fund. That was my father's legacy. Stolen by his own brother-in-law to fund a lifestyle of leased cars and facade renovations. I sat there, staring at the screen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt the click of a lock engaging. The ambiguity was gone. They weren't family. They were targets. My phone buzzed. It was the group chat. Marlene had gone on the offensive. Marlene. Family. I am heartbroken to say this, but things have taken a sad turn. Vivian came to the house today and threatened us with legal action. She is threatening to sue us over a misunderstanding about the florist. The messages flooded in. Aunt Linda. What? Sue the family? During the wedding week? Cousin Brad. That is low. Viv. Even for you. Marlene. We tried to include her. We tried to be kind, but she is clearly not in a good place mentally. She is lashing out. I am just worried she is going to cause a scene at the ceremony. She was deploying the unstable narrative again, preemptively discrediting me before I could reveal the theft. Kelsey messaged me privately. Kelsey. Vivian, please tell me this isn't true. Mom is crying. She says you screamed at her. Please, just let it go until after the wedding. I cannot deal with this right now. I looked at Kelsey's message. She was the collateral damage. She was being held hostage by her mother's lies. Just as I had been. I felt a pull of compassion. I could burn it all down right now. I could post the invoice, the trust transfer, the North Pine documents. I could detonate the wedding, but that would make me the villain they wanted me to be. That would make me the crazy one causing a scene. I needed to be smarter. I needed to be the auditor. I replied to the main group chat. Vivian. There is no lawsuit. There was an unauthorized use of my identity to secure credit, which I declined to validate. I will not be discussing this further in a group setting. I am here to celebrate Kelsey. Please stop using my name to distract from logistical issues. It was calm. It was factual. It denied the drama while hinting at the truth. Marlene did not reply. She knew I had fired a warning shot. I put the phone down. My head was throbbing. Then, my phone rang again. It was a number I recognized but hadn't seen in years. It was my Uncle Arthur. Marlene's older brother, the one who lived in Vermont and rarely came to family events because he couldn't stand the noise, I answered. Uncle Arthur? Vivian, he said. His voice was gravelly, low. I am in the lobby of your hotel. You are? I saw the chat, he said, and I saw Marlene's message. Knowing Marlene, if she says you are threatening to sue, it means she stole something from you. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Can I come down? I asked. No, he said. Meet me in the bar. It is darker. I went down to the hotel bar. It was a dimly lit room with leather banquettes and a fireplace. Arthur was sitting in the corner, nursing a scotch. He looked older than I remembered. His face lined, but his eyes were sharp. I sat down. You look like your father, he said, sliding a menu toward me. I didn't know you were coming to the wedding. I said. I wasn't, he said. But then I heard about the guest list nonsense, and then I heard Marlene was asking for money, and then I saw her say you were unstable. He took a sip of his drink. That is their favorite word, isn't it? Unstable. They used it on your mother for years. I nodded. I found out why today. Arthur. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. The trust? I froze. You knew? I suspected. He said, your father told me, a month before he died, that he had moved some assets for you. He was worried about his heart. He wanted to make sure you were safe. When he died, and suddenly there was no money. I asked Ted. Ted told me the market ate it. And you believed him? I asked, a flash of anger cutting through. I wanted to believe him. Arthur said quietly, I didn't want to believe my own sister would rob a widow and an orphan, and I am a coward. Vivian, I hate conflict. I stayed in Vermont and pretended it didn't happen. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, but I kept this. He said, what is it? It is a letter your father wrote to me, dated 2012. It details the account numbers. He sent it to me for safekeeping. Just in case. I stared at the envelope. This was the smoking gun. This was the proof that the trust existed, independent of my mother's memory. Why now? I asked, taking the letter. Why give this to me now? Because I'm tired, Arthur said, and because I saw what they did to you in that chat. They are trying to eat you alive. Vivian, just like they ate your mother's confidence. I can't watch it again. He leaned forward. Listen to me. Marlene is terrified. She is frantic. This wedding isn't a celebration. It is a Hail Mary pass to save them from bankruptcy. If you expose them, you destroy the family. They destroyed the family 10 years ago. I said, they just forgot to tell anyone. Arthur nodded slowly. So what are you going to do? He asked. I touched the letter. I thought about Kelsey, shaking in the coffee shop. I thought about my mother, medicated and gaslit in her small apartment. I thought about the invoice with my name on it. I am not going to sue them. I said, not yet. Then what? I am going to the wedding. I said, and I'm going to tell the truth, not to destroy them, but to clear the record. Arthur looked at me with a strange expression. Pride, maybe, or fear. Be careful, he said. A cornered animal bites. I am not afraid of bites. I said, I have had my rabies shot. I stood up. I had the affidavit. I had the transfer record. And now I had my father's letter. The investigation was over. The audit was complete. Tomorrow was the presentation of findings. I went back to my room. I didn't check the group chat. I didn't look at the panic Marlene was likely spinning. I laid the documents out on the bed. The truth was a physical thing. It had weight. I messaged Elena one last time. Vivian, prepare the filing, but don't file it. Wait for my signal. Elena, understood. Good luck. I turned off the light. I needed to sleep. I needed to be sharp, because tomorrow, I wasn't just a guest. I was the consequence. The welcome gathering was held on the lawn of the Briar Haven Yacht Club, a stretch of manicured green that rolled down to the water's edge. A large white tent had been erected, open-sided to catch the breeze, strung with hundreds of Edison bulbs that glowed like trapped fireflies against the twilight. I arrived precisely at 6 o'clock. I wore a charcoal dress that was structured, modest, and expensive enough to signal that I did not need a loan. I carried a small clutch containing my phone and the folded affidavit from my attorney. I was not there to drink. I was there to observe the ecosystem before I dismantled it. As I stepped onto the grass, the conversation nearest to me died. It was a physical sensation, like walking into a cold pocket of air in a warm lake. My cousin Sarah, who was holding a glass of rosé, looked at me, her eyes widening, and then immediately turned her back to whisper to her husband. I kept walking. I kept my chin level. I had walked into federal courtrooms where billionaires wanted me dead. I could handle a few suburbanites with bad mortgages. Marlene was holding court near the Raw bar. She wore a flowing dress in a shade of aggressive turquoise, her laugh ringing out a little too loudly. She was gripping the arm of a tall, silver-haired man who I assumed was Franklin Larkin, the father of the groom. He looked bored, his eyes scanning the horizon as if looking for a better investment. I did not approach them. I went to the bar and ordered a club soda with lime. From my vantage point, I scanned the room. I saw the familiar faces of my family: Uncle Dave, Aunt Linda, the cousins. They were all performing their roles, laughing at the right moments, complimenting the view, desperate to prove they belonged in this tax bracket. But then I noticed something else. There were two men standing near the perimeter of the tent, just behind Marlene's circle. They were not dressed for a yacht club. They wore black suits that were ill-fitting around the shoulders, and they were not drinking. They were not guests. They were not staff. They stood with their hands clasped in front of them, their eyes moving methodically across the crowd. They were watching Marlene. It was not a protective stance. It was a custodial one. They looked like they were guarding a flight risk. I sipped my soda. Who are you? I wondered. Creditors? Private security? A hand touched my elbow. I turned to see my Uncle Arthur. He had cleaned up since our meeting in the bar, wearing a navy blazer that smelled faintly of mothballs. He looked nervous, his eyes darting toward Marlene. "Walk with me," he said quietly. We moved away from the tent, toward the edge of the lawn where the seawall met the rocks. The wind was stronger here, masking our voices. "I have the rest of it," Arthur said. He reached inside his blazer and pulled out a manila envelope. It was folded in half to fit into his pocket. "What is this?" I asked. "The originals," he said. "I gave you the copy of the letter yesterday, but this is the notarized transfer form your mother signed, and the countersigned receipt from North Pine Development." I took the envelope. It felt heavy, though it was just paper. "Why give them to me now?" I asked. "Because I saw those men," Arthur said, jerking his head toward the tent. "Do you know who they are?" "No. They are Larkin's people," Arthur said. "Corporate security. I heard Ted talking to one of them in the parking lot. They are not here for security. They are here to make sure the agreement is honored." "What agreement?" "I don't know," Arthur admitted. But Ted looked terrified. He looked like a man who had sold something he didn't own. I looked back at the tent. Marlene was laughing again, but her hand was gripping her wine glass so hard her knuckles were white. The two men hadn't moved. I thanked Arthur and slipped the envelope into my oversized clutch. It barely fit. I walked further down the seawall, away from the party, needing a moment to think. I pulled out my phone and opened the dossier David had sent me on the Larkin family business. Larkin Event Holdings, a massive conglomerate of venues, catering services, and logistics. I scrolled down to their list of subsidiaries. It was a long list: shell companies, holding firms, real estate trusts, and then I saw it. Larkin Logistics Solutions. I stopped. I knew that name. 4 years ago, during the Harrogate audit, I had flagged a series of invoices from a vendor called Larkin Logistics. They had billed Harrogate for event management and transport for a retreat in Aspen that never happened. It was a kickback scheme. One of the Harrogate partners was funneling money out of the firm through Larkin Logistics to hide assets before the collapse. When I testified, I exposed the fake invoices. The Harrogate partner went to jail. Larkin Logistics was forced to repay $2 million to the bankruptcy trustee to avoid prosecution. I looked up at the tent, at Franklin Larkin. This wasn't just a wedding, this was a merger of liabilities. The Larkins knew exactly who I was. I was the auditor who had cost them $2 million and bruised their reputation. Marlene wasn't just hiding me because she was ashamed of my failure. She was hiding me because she had likely promised Franklin Larkin that the Vivian problem was handled. If I was painted as crazy, unstable, and a liar, then my credibility regarding the old Larkin-Harrogate connection would be destroyed. If I ever spoke up about their past involvement, they could point to this weekend and say, "She is just a bitter, mentally ill relative who ruined her cousin's wedding. You can't trust her." Marlene was selling my reputation to buy her husband a lifeline. I felt a wave of nausea. It was so cold, so transactional. Vivian? I turned. Kelsey was standing on the path behind me. She was shivering, her arms wrapped around her waist. She looked like a ghost in her white rehearsal dress. "Hey," I said gently, "you are out here all alone," she said. Her voice was brittle. "I prefer the quiet." I said, "It is a beautiful venue. Kelsey." She didn't look at the ocean. She looked at her shoes. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. I waited. "Mom." "Mom told Mr. Larkin that you wouldn't be a problem," Kelsey said. "What does that mean?" I asked. "Mr. Larkin. He is scary. Viv. He ran a background check on the whole guest list. When your name came up, he freaked out. He said you were the one who caused the mess with his logistics company years ago. He wanted you uninvited. And why wasn't I asked. "Because Mom told him she could manage you," Kelsey said, tears spilling over. She told him that if he invested in Dad's new company, she would make sure you were neutralized. She said she would make sure everyone knew you were unreliable, so nothing you said would matter. I closed my eyes. It was confirmed. I was the sacrificial lamb on the altar of North Pine Development. "And you knew?" I asked, opening my eyes. "I didn't understand it at first," Kelsey cried. "I just thought they were worried about drama. But then she made me Google you, and she made me post that screenshot. She said we had to set the stage." "Kelsey," I said, my voice dropping, "do you realize what they are doing? They are not just being mean. They are destroying my professional reputation to secure a loan. That is extortion. That is conspiracy. I know." She sobbed. "I know, and I hate it. I just want to marry Todd. I don't care about the money. I don't care about the companies. But they are all so intense. Todd is terrified of his father. Mom is terrified of being poor. And I am just stuck." I stepped forward and took her by the shoulders. She felt frail, like a bird that had flown into a window. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "You are not stuck. You are an adult. You can walk away. You can say no." "I can't," she whispered. "The money. The deposits. Money is just paper. Kelsey, it is not worth your soul. And love? Love isn't supposed to come with a gag order. If you marry into this family, if you marry into a dynamic where truth is a liability, you will never be safe. Look at what they are doing to me. In 5 years, that will be you if you step out of line." Kelsey broke down then. It wasn't a pretty, cinematic cry. It was a guttural, ugly sound of exhaustion. She collapsed against me, weeping into my blazer. I held her, stroking her hair, looking over her shoulder at the brightly lit tent where the predators were drinking champagne. "I am so sorry. Viv," she choked out. "I am so sorry." "Shh," I said. "It is okay, but you have to decide. Kels, you have to decide who you want to be." We stood there for a long time until her shivering stopped. She pulled back, wiping her face. "I have to go back," she said, her voice dead. "If I am gone too long, Mom will send the security guys." "Go," I said. "I will be there soon." She walked back toward the lights. I watched her go, realizing that she was walking into a prison cell disguised as a marriage. I checked my makeup in my compact mirror. I looked calm. I looked dangerous. I walked back up the hill. As I neared the tent, Marlene intercepted me. She moved with the speed of a viper. grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the shadows of the catering van. "Where have you been?" she hissed. "People are asking. Let them ask," I said, pulling my arm free. "We need to settle this," Marlene said. Her eyes were darting around, checking for the men in the black suits. "Settle what?" "The invoice," she said. "The flowers, the dinner. I already told you. Marlene, I am not paying." "Listen to me, you little brat," she snarled. Stepping into my personal space, she smelled of white wine and desperation. "You are going to pay. You are going to go to the concierge desk right now and put your card down for the upgrades. It is $6,000. That is nothing to you. And if you don't, Marlene said, her voice dropping to a whisper, then I will make sure every single person in that tent knows exactly why you were fired from Harrogate. I will tell them you were sleeping with the boss. I will tell them you stole the money. I will tell them you are a pathological liar who had a breakdown and had to be institutionalized." "That is a lie," I said. "It doesn't matter if it is a lie," she said, smiling a manic, tight smile. "It only matters if they believe it, and they will believe me. I am the mother of the bride. You are the jealous, childless cousin who lives alone, who has the credibility here." "Vivian?" I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the fear behind the malice. She was terrified of the Larkins finding out she was a fraud. So she had to make me the bigger fraud. "This is extortion." "Marlene," I said calmly. "Call it what you want," she said. "Just pay the bill. Consider it a retroactive thank you for us not putting your mother in a state home when your father died. The mention of my mother was the mistake." I looked at her, and the last shred of familial obligation evaporated. "No," I said. Marlene's face twisted. "You will regret this." I walked away from her. I walked straight into the tent. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for 7:30 at a restaurant down the street. But the speeches were starting here. At the cocktail hour, I found a spot near the back. The two men in black suits were watching me now. Marlene must have signaled them. Marlene tapped a spoon against her glass. The crowd hushed. "Family, friends," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you so much for being here. It means the world to us." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. "We have all made sacrifices to be here," she said. "Some more than others. We are so grateful to have everyone together, even those who have struggled to find their path." A few heads turned toward me. The Whisper Network had been efficient. "We believe in second chances in this family," Marlene continued, her voice gaining strength. "We believe in forgiveness, and we believe that when someone has made mistakes, the best thing they can do is own up to them." She was off script now. I saw Ted shift uncomfortably. I saw Kelsey stare at the floor. "Vivian," Marlene said, pointing her glass at me. The room went deadly silent. "I know you have been going through a lot," Marlene said, her tone dripping with faux concern. "And I know you have been hesitant to contribute because of your situation. But I think it is brave of you to show up. I think we all deserve to hear that you are ready to move forward. Don't you have something you want to say to the family? Something to confess?" She was trying to force a public apology. She wanted me to break, to cry, to admit I was unstable and sorry for the drama, thereby validating her narrative. If I apologized, I admitted guilt. If I ran, I admitted guilt. She thought those were my only two options. I felt my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage, but my hands were steady. I placed my soda on a high-top table. I walked toward the center of the room. The crowd parted. I could feel their eyes, judgmental, curious, hungry for the crash. I stopped 10 feet from Marlene. She looked triumphant. She thought she had won. She thought she had bullied the mouse into the trap. I looked at her. Then I looked at Franklin Larkin, who was watching with a cold, detached interest. I cleared my throat. My voice did not shake. It was the voice I used when I delivered a finding of material breach to a CEO. "Aunt Marlene," I said, loud enough for the back row to hear. "You asked if I have something to confess." Marlene nodded encouragingly. like a teacher coaxing a slow child. "Go ahead. Honey, we are all family here." I smiled. It was not a nice smile, I confess. I said that I am surprised. Marlene frowned. "Surprised?" "I am surprised," I continued, "that you would choose this moment, in front of the Larkin family and their security team, to bring up the subject of financial transparency." Marlene's smile faltered. "Because," I said, keeping my eyes locked on hers, "if we are confessing things, we should probably start with the invoice you sent to the florist yesterday. The one where you authorized a $6,000 charge to my company without my permission." A ripple of shock went through the room. Someone gasped. "Vivian!" Marlene shrieked. "That is not—" Or, I interrupted, raising my voice slightly. "Perhaps we should confess why you told Kelsey to search for a sealed deposition regarding a company called Larkin Logistics." I saw Franklin Larkin stiffen. He took a step forward. Marlene went pale. "Vivian, stop. You are making a scene. You are unwell. I am not unwell." "Marlene," I said coldly, "I am an auditor, and I am done being the line item you use to balance your books." I turned to the crowd. "There will be no confession from me tonight," I stated. "I am here to witness my cousin's marriage. I will not be used as entertainment, and I will certainly not be used as collateral." I turned back to Marlene. "Do not ask me to speak again," I said softly. "You will not like what I have to say next." I turned on my heel and walked out. The silence behind me was absolute. Then, the explosion of whispers began. I didn't run. I walked at a measured pace. I walked past the men in the black suits, who looked unsure of what to do. I walked past my Uncle Arthur, who gave me a barely perceptible nod. I walked out of the tent, across the lawn, and to my car. I got in and locked the doors. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was crashing. I pulled out my phone. I opened the text thread with Elena, my attorney. I typed one sentence. "Vivian, if anything happens tomorrow, file." It wasn't a threat. It was a fail-safe. I drove back to the hotel. The wedding was tomorrow. Marlene would come for me. The Larkins would come for me. They had to. I had just signaled that I knew where the bodies were buried. I went to my room and deadbolted the door. I pushed a chair under the handle. I laid the folder Arthur had given me on the desk. I was not safe. I knew that. But for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't hiding. I poured a glass of water and sat by the window, watching the lights of the yacht club in the distance. Let them come. I thought, I have the receipts. The morning of the wedding arrived with a heavy gray sky that threatened rain but refused to break. It was a perfect atmospheric match for the mood inside the Larkin estate. The air felt pressurized, dense with the static of unsaid things. I dressed slowly. I chose a dress of deep midnight blue, tailored and sharp, armor made of silk. I applied my makeup with the precision of a woman preparing for court, not a celebration. I did not pack tissues. I packed evidence. Inside my structured leather handbag, I placed the notarized transfer document regarding the stolen trust, the floral invoice with the fraudulent authorization, and the letter from my father. I had learned the hard way that in the Bryant family, truth was a gas. It expanded and contracted to fit the container of their ego. You could not just speak the truth. You had to pin it down with paper. I drove to the venue, a sprawling historic mansion on the cliffs. The parking lot was filled with luxury cars that likely belonged to the bank. I parked my rental sedan between a Bentley and a vintage Jaguar. I walked to the entrance, showing my invitation to a security guard who checked my name against a list on a tablet. He paused for a fraction of a second too long before nodding me through. They were watching me. I could feel it. I did not go to the bridal suite. I did not go to the family holding room. I went straight to the ceremony seating, choosing a chair in the 4th row on the bride's side, close enough to be seen, far enough to avoid being pulled into a huddled, whispering panic. 10 minutes before the music was set to start, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned. It was Kelsey. She was already in her wedding gown, a breathtaking creation of lace and tulle that must have cost more than my first year of college. But her face was stripped of color. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Vivian," she whispered. Please, can you come with me for a second? Just to the side? I looked at the guests filling the rows. Marlene was at the front, aggressively greeting the Larkin relatives. She hadn't seen us. I stood up and followed Kelsey into a small alcove hidden by a massive floral arrangement. The very flowers I had refused to pay for. What is it? I asked. Kelsey was shaking. She fumbled with the hidden pocket in her dress, a modern design feature, and pulled out her phone. I lied to you, she said, her voice trembling. About what? About the Google search, she said. I told you Mom made me do it, and she did. She pushed me. But, Viv, the idea didn't come from her. I frowned. What do you mean? Kelsey unlocked the phone and shoved it into my hand. Look at this, she said. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number, dated 3 weeks ago. Subject: Protecting the family. You should know who is on your guest list. Ask Google about Vivian Bryant and the Wellspring deposition. Link attached. I stared at the message. The link went directly to the obscure legal archive Tasha and I had found. The one that required specific, technical search terms to locate. I assumed it was Mom trying to be anonymous. Kelsey cried softly. I thought she was just being passive-aggressive. So I clicked it, and then when I showed her, she acted surprised. But then she got this look in her eyes, like she could use it. I handed the phone back to her. My mind was racing, connecting circuits that I had missed. Marlene didn't find the dirt. Someone fed it to her. Someone wanted this conflict. Someone wanted to make sure that my credibility was destroyed before I even stepped foot in Briar Haven. If I was just the struggling cousin, I was annoying. But if I was Vivian the fraud, I was neutralized. Who sent this? I asked. I don't know, Kelsey said. I called the number. It is disconnected. I looked at the bride. She was a pawn in a game she didn't even know she was playing. It wasn't your mother, I said, my voice cold. It was the house. What? The Larkins? I said, or someone connected to them. They knew I was coming. They knew I had a history with their logistics arm. They needed a reason to discredit me. So they weaponized your mother's insecurity. They handed her a loaded gun and pointed it at me. Kelsey looked horrified. You think Todd's family did this? I think businesses protect their assets. Kelsey. And right now, you and I are just liabilities to be managed. The music started. A string quartet playing a haunting version of a pop song. I have to go, Kelsey whispered, panic rising in her eyes. I have to walk. Kelsey, I said, grabbing her wrist gently. You don't have to walk. You can walk away. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw the desire to run. It was naked and terrified. But then the heavy doors opened, and the face of the wedding planner appeared. Signaling her, I can't, she said, pulling away. It is too late. The deposits are paid. She turned and ran toward her destiny. I watched her go, realizing that the tragedy wasn't that she didn't know the truth. The tragedy was that she couldn't afford it. The ceremony was a blur of high production values. The vows were spoken into microphones that cost more than my car. Franklin Larkin watched from the front row like a chairman presiding over a merger. Marlene cried, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief, performing the role of the proud mother to perfection. I sat in the fourth row, dry-eyed. I felt like a spy in the house of love. The reception was held in the grand ballroom. It was a cavernous space filled with crystal chandeliers and tables draped in heavy silver linens. The centerpiece of every table was a towering arrangement of white orchids, the ones Marlene had tried to bill to my company. I found my seat at table 9. It was near the kitchen doors, populated by distant cousins and a few college friends who looked already drunk. I sat down and placed my purse on my lap. I did not drink the champagne. The dinner service began. Servers moved like synchronized swimmers, dropping plates of filet mignon in front of guests. The hum of conversation was loud, cheerful, oblivious. Then came the toasts. The best man spoke. The maid of honor spoke. Franklin Larkin spoke, welcoming Kelsey to the family with a speech that focused entirely on legacy and integrity, words that tasted like ash in my mouth. Then, Marlene stood up. She had been drinking. Her face was flushed. her smile a little too wide. She held the microphone with a white-knuckled grip. "My beautiful daughter," she began. Her voice boomed through the speakers. "I am so proud. We have been through so much to get here." She paused for effect, looking out over the room. "You know, families are like old houses," she said. "They have cracks. They have weathered storms. We have had our share of difficult seasons." Her eyes found me at table 9. The spotlight followed her gaze, illuminating me in a harsh, white circle. "But we believe in redemption," Marlene said, smiling benevolently. "We believe that no matter how far someone falls, no matter how many mistakes they make in their career or their personal life, they can still be welcomed home. Isn't that right, Vivian?" The room went silent. People turned to look at me. It was a public shaming disguised as a tribute. She was cementing the narrative. Vivian the failure. Vivian the charity case. Vivian who was lucky to be allowed in the room. Marlene raised her glass. "To Vivian," she said, "for showing us that even the black sheep can be part of the flock, if they just humble themselves." There was a scattering of polite, confused laughter. Someone clapped uncertainly. I felt the heat rise in my face, a burning sensation that started at my neck and flooded my cheeks. It was the old shame, the reflex to shrink, to apologize, to disappear. But then I felt the weight of the purse on my lap. I touched the leather. I felt the outline of the documents. No, I was done. I was done being the prop in their play. I was done protecting their fragile egos at the expense of my dignity. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. Marlene's smile faltered. She looked annoyed, as if I had missed my cue to nod and look grateful. I walked toward the head table. I did not rush. I walked with the steady, rhythmic pace of an auditor approaching the witness stand. "Vivian?" Marlene said into the mic. Her voice tense. "What are you doing?" "Sit down." "Honey?" I reached the stage. I walked up the 3 small steps. I held out my hand for the microphone. Marlene clutched it to her chest. "This is not the time." "Vivian," she hissed. "Off mic. Give it to me." I said. My voice was low, but it carried. The room was deadly quiet now. Franklin Larkin was staring at me with cold, shark-like eyes. Marlene looked at the crowd, then at me. She couldn't create a scene by wrestling me for it. She handed it over with a look that promised murder. I turned to face the room. The lights were blinding. I couldn't see individual faces, just a sea of expectant blurs. "Thank you, Aunt Marlene," I said. My voice was steady. It did not shake. I adjusted the stand. "I appreciate the toast." I continued. "And I agree. Families are like houses, but sometimes, when you inspect the foundation, you find that the cracks aren't from the weather. They are from the people living inside who have been stripping the copper from the walls." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marlene stepped forward. "Vivian, you are drunk." "I am perfectly sober," I said, not looking at her. "I am also employed. I run a forensic audit firm, which is why I was surprised yesterday to receive an invoice from this wedding's florist for $6,000. I reached into my purse and pulled out the invoice. I held it up. "This invoice lists me as the authorized payer." I said, "It was secured using a spoofed email address pretending to be me. I did not authorize this charge. I did not agree to sponsor this event. I let the paper drop to the floor. Using a relative's identity to secure credit without their consent is not a family mistake." I said, "It is fraud." Marlene let out a strangled sound. She lunged for my arm, but I stepped aside, and regarding the mistakes of my past that my aunt alluded to, I continued, my voice hardening. "I think it is important to clarify the record. I was a whistleblower in a federal case involving financial misconduct. I know what it looks like when people move money to hide the truth." I pulled the second document from my purse, the transfer receipt, which brings me to the matter of the Bryant Family Trust. I said. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Marlene went rigid. Ted, sitting at the table, knocked over his water glass. "For 10 years. I was told my father left nothing." I said, "I was told the money was lost to the market. I was told my mother was too unstable to understand the finances, so my aunt and uncle handled it. I held up the notarized page. This is a transfer confirmation dated October 14th, 2012. I read, "It shows the transfer of $150,000 from my father's estate to North Pine Development, a company owned by Theodore and Marlene Bryant." I looked directly at Ted. He was gray. "This money was not lost," I said. "It was stolen. It was used to fund a lifestyle that is on display here tonight." And the narrative that I was unstable or unsuccessful was cultivated for one reason, so that I would never ask where the money went. I dropped the document on the floor next to the invoice. "I have legal counsel reviewing these documents as of this morning." I added, "The room fractured. It wasn't a slow burn. It was an instant shattering." The Larkins stood up. Relatives at the back table stood up. The murmur became a roar. Ted rushed the stage. "Vivian, stop. You don't know what you are doing." I turned to him. "I know exactly what I'm doing. Ted, I am auditing the books." Franklin Larkin appeared at the base of the stairs. He was purple with rage. Not at the theft. He didn't care about my father's money. But at the exposure. "Turn off the microphone," he shouted at the sound technician. "Cut the feed." The sound cut out. The room was plunged into acoustic chaos. Franklin stormed up the steps. "You little bitch," he spat, his veneer of civility gone. "You are ruining this." "We have a deal." "The deal is void," I said calmly, my voice unamplified but clear in the sudden silence near the stage. "Because I am not part of your collateral package." I looked past him to Kelsey. She was sitting at the head table, frozen. Her hands were over her mouth. She was looking at her mother, then at her father, seeing them for the first time without the filter of loyalty. She saw the fear. She saw the guilt. "Kelsey," I said. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide, terrified pools. I walked over to her. The groom, Todd, looked like he wanted to block me, but he saw the look on my face and stayed seated. I leaned down. "If you want out," I said, low enough that only she could hear. "I will get you out. I have a car outside. I have a credit card that actually works. We can leave. Right now." It wasn't a savior fantasy. It was an offer of logistics. I was offering her an extraction. Kelsey looked at the car keys in my hand. Then she looked at Franklin Larkin, who was currently screaming at her mother. She looked at Todd, who was checking his phone, likely looking for a PR strategy. She looked back at me. Tears spilled over her lashes. She opened her mouth. Her lips trembled, but she didn't move. She couldn't move. The weight of the dress, the weight of the expectation, the weight of the fear, it pinned her to the chair. "I am sorry," she whispered. I nodded. I understood. Not everyone can jump from the moving train. I straightened up. Marlene was behind me now. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "You are jealous," she hissed. Her face contorted into a mask of pure ugliness. "You are a jealous, bitter, lonely woman. You ruined everything because you can't stand to see us happy." I looked at her hand on my arm. Then I looked at her face. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just the cool detachment of a job completed. "No, Marlene," I said quietly, "I am not jealous. And I am not cooperating anymore." I pulled my arm free. I set the microphone down on the white tablecloth. It made a dull thud. I turned and walked away. I walked down the steps. I walked through the parted sea of guests. I heard them whispering. "Did she say stolen? Is it true?" The invoice. I saw the two men in black suits moving toward me, but Franklin Larkin waved them off. He knew it was too late. If they touched me now, with the room watching, it would be assault. The damage was done. The truth was on the floor. I walked out of the ballroom. I walked through the lobby. I walked out into the cool night air. The silence outside was heavy and sweet. The ocean roared in the distance, indifferent to the human wreckage inside the tent. My phone buzzed in my hand. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again, a rapid-fire staccato of notifications. I reached my car and unlocked it. I sat in the driver's seat and closed the door, sealing myself in the quiet. I looked at the phone. The family group chat was exploding. Aunt Linda. "Oh my God. Marlene, is it true?" Cousin Brad. "The invoice looked real." Uncle Dave. "We need to talk. Now." Then, a new message appeared. It was from the unknown number, the one that had sent Kelsey the link. The one Kelsey said was disconnected. The number had been added to the group chat by an administrator I didn't recognize. Unknown. She finally remembered who she is. "Tell Marlene we are done waiting. The collateral is worthless." I stared at the screen. "Tell Marlene we are done waiting." Arthur was right. Marlene owed money to people far worse than the bank. She owed the kind of people who engineered family destruction to force a payment, and by exposing her, by proving I wasn't the weak link they could use as leverage, I had just stripped her of her last asset. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the hero. I was just the one who refused to be the currency. I put the phone on the passenger seat. I started the engine. I didn't look back at the mansion. I didn't wait to see if Kelsey would run out the door. I shifted into gear and drove toward the highway, leaving the ending raw, open, and unresolved. The audit was closed. Thank you for listening to this story. It was a journey into the darker side of family loyalty and the price of truth. I hope Vivian's choice resonated with you. I would love to hear where you are listening from. Please drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this narrative, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice served cold. Share your thoughts in English. Do you think Vivian went too far? Or did she do exactly what was needed? Let's discuss.